Newcastle 3, Wolves 0, and Wolves are not an easy opponent to beat, let alone beat 3-0. Wolves have been causing a lot of teams a lot of problems this season, but Newcastle, as they grew into the game, as they grew in confidence, they looked really, really good. And I felt like watching Newcastle, they got their legs back. They looked a little bit like they did earlier on in the season where we could see what Newcastle did. They looked like the old Newcastle, and I think Joe Willock's return was a massive part of that. I think having Joelinton, Willock and Tonali out has been a big problem for Newcastle, which has caused them a lot of problems this season. And I thought the legs and energy from Newcastle was brilliant today. And obviously I'm a Manchester United fan, so I don't watch every single Newcastle game, but I've watched Newcastle this season, particularly early in the season, where they've looked really good. And I'm like, yeah, they've got some really good players. And then I've watched them more lately where they haven't been as good, but I've seen they've had injuries. I generally think if Newcastle can keep Willock fit, if they can keep the main bulk of their squad fit like Isak, I think they can easily push that sixth spot, potentially even beat Man United to sixth place. But I want to talk about Joe Willock, I want to talk about Anthony Gordon, I want to talk about Bruno Guimaraes, and I want to talk about Isak. I also want to talk about Livramento, what he'll bring, because if Trippier is injured, Livramento will play a lot, and I think that's while Trippier is a big loss, I think Livramento is a very, very good replacement. I also thought Fabian Schär was really good. I think Fabian Schär's passing is something I noticed today, and I don't watch Newcastle every week, but I do think that Fabian Schär is very, very underrated in his passing. Just something I picked out. But I want to talk about Joe Willock before I get into the goal scorers, because I think his return today was massive for Newcastle. I think Joelinton, Joe Willock, they do something that I don't think Sean Longstaff and Miley can do in terms of their ability to cover ground and move the ball forward. Lewis Miley is a very good player, but he's just a kid. And I thought Joe Willock made Newcastle tick today. I think he is game-changing for Newcastle. I think there was a 5-minute period where he just hit like 3 top-quality passes. I thought his passing was absolutely brilliant today. But what I think Willock added was his ability to find space between the lines. I think off the ball, Joe Willock has always been a very intelligent player. Even when he had that spell a couple of years ago where he just scored like loads of goals. Do you remember that? It was always his ability to find the space between the lines to cause a problem for players, because his off-the-ball movement is really good, and I think he's a really unpredictable player. But what I thought made the difference was Newcastle felt like they had their legs back. Newcastle were known for being one of the athletically best teams in the league in terms of they run, and that's why they've took points off a lot of big sides in the past, like PSG, Manchester United, even big teams in the past. Newcastle have always caused problems to, because they can just run. And I felt like with the injuries, with the game congestion, Newcastle sort of lost that, and Eddie Howe was coming under fire, and I understand that, but I did feel like it was never really Eddie Howe's fault. I was just looking at the players Newcastle had available, when Willock, Tonali and Joelinton, one of those has to partner Bruno Guimaraes if you want to achieve the best balance. And when they had those 3 out, I thought that was a big problem. But I thought Willock's energy really, really helped Newcastle. Not only was the midfield more balanced with Willock, Longstaff and Bruno Guimaraes, not only was Willock bringing that energy, but I also felt that it was a big part of the press working well. I think Newcastle's press has always been very effective, but I think recently it's not been used as much, and that might be due to exhaustion, due to injuries, not having the personnel available. But I thought that today Newcastle's pressing was better, their all-round game was better, they were covering so much more ground. Newcastle looked full of energy. And I think, Joe Willock and Joelinton and Tonali do something that I think is so important when they play next to Bruno Guimaraes, in terms of not only the ground coverage, but, find space between the line, have that ability to progress the ball. And I think having those 3 players out has been a big miss. And I think not only does Joe Willock bring energy and legs to the midfield, but I think he brings that pace. He can, sort of run in behind, he can cause a problem, he can find space. But I also think defensively he's very good. But what impressed me about Willock wasn't just the energy, wasn't just his off-the-ball work. I was really impressed with Willock's good passes between the lines. Not only can he play between the lines in terms of he can move between the lines, but he can pass between the lines. He can break lines with his passing, and that allows Newcastle to move the ball quicker. This is just my opinion. I don't watch Newcastle every week. I'm a Man United fan. You can tell me if I'm speaking rubbish. But I think with Willock coming on, when he gets the ball, he moves it quite quickly and he can move the ball forward. He can just get the ball and push forward. Sometimes, Lewis Miley and Sean Longstaff, and this isn't me criticising Lewis Miley. He's a 17-year-old kid and I think he's a very good player. But they sometimes will just get the ball and they might just play it backwards or sideways. I noticed with Joelinton, he likes to get the ball, quickly turn, play it forward, move forward. And when you move the ball quicker, you're going to that means the opposition's more likely to be caught out of place, out of position, which means you're more likely in the final third to be able to get through and create, shot creating actions because you move the ball quicker. That kind of makes sense. And I thought his line breaking pass, his ability to get the ball and move it quicker, his ability to progress the ball was really, really important for Newcastle today. And I think his ball carrying ability, his ability to progress the ball, his ability to hit passes, whether they're long or short, is actually really, really underrated. I think that he's a very, very good 8 and a very good player. And I think he would be man of the match today because I really felt that Willock made a difference. All in all, I do want to talk about other players. I do think a big part of it maybe was psychological because they got the early goal. And I do think that Newcastle started a little bit shaky. And I think that's understandable. Like that Arsenal performance, you were shambolic, let's be honest. And I do think, to be honest, like you started a little bit like this is an open game. This could be 1-1. This could be 2-2. And then as the game went on, you got better. And I wanted to talk about centre-backs. Fabian Schär, I thought his ball-playing ability was really good. I thought the centre-backs were a lot stronger in their duels. But we need to talk about the goal scorers. Also, shout out to Jacob Murphy. Jacob Murphy's a player that, sort of not seen as maybe a big player at Newcastle, but I thought that he worked really hard today and did really well. But let's talk about Anthony Gordon. I'm going to see if I can get some statistics up on my screen regarding Anthony Gordon and the season he's having, because I think you can argue it's between him and Willock for man of the match. Not only is Anthony Gordon one of the most hard-working wingers in the league, not only does he consistently press, but he's becoming a goal threat. Those numbers are pretty good. I thought he had 10 goals, but it's 9. He's getting quite good numbers. He's always a threat, but he can run in behind. But what stands about Gordon for me, it's not like goals and assists and all of that, but I actually think 1v1, Gordon's very, very difficult to deal with. I think Gordon can get the ball and he can drive at his fullback, and he likes to take them on, and he's direct, and he likes to make things happen. And I think that's what you want in your wingers. In this day and age, you don't want wingers that are just going to slow the game down, go into the half space, that don't have that rapid pace. You want wingers that are going to run at your players and be direct. And I feel like Gordon was terrorising his players. But not only that, I think having Willock in the side allowed Gordon to remain and press high. And when Gordon's pressing high, he's more likely to put Wolves into mistakes. And Wolves were really struggling to play out from the Newcastle press. And I think having someone like Willock and a bit more midfield security behind the attack meant that the attack could really, really press high, which made it difficult for Wolves to play out from the back. And I thought Gordon was really good today, not just the goal, but his all-round game was good, taking on players. And I've been saying this for a while. Like you could go through my tweets. I've been talking about how I've been impressed with Anthony Gordon since his time at Everton, and I think that he's a good player. But back in September, I was saying, you know what? Gareth Southgate should be looking at Gordon. And I think right now, considering how good he's been, and not just good, but consistent, and I think consistent, particularly because Newcastle in general haven't been very consistent this season, and a lot of other players haven't been consistent this season, not just at Newcastle, but at other clubs. I think Gareth Southgate seriously needs to have a look at Anthony Gordon, because I love Marcus Rashford. I think Marcus Rashford is brilliant. But right now on form, Gordon deserves to be playing ahead of Marcus Rashford. Gordon deserves to be playing ahead of Jack Grealish. Gordon deserves to be playing ahead of Raheem Sterling. Saka's been good, Cole Palmer's been good, Bowen's been good, but Gordon has been almost just as good this season. He's been better than Bowen this season. I think you can argue he's been better than Cole Palmer this season. It's just that, Cole Palmer plays for Chelsea. I think Gordon's influence, I think he's been very, very good, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. I also wanted to talk about Isak. Isak has 15 goals in 27 appearances this season. I think Isak's one of those guys where he's a good player, but I think his availability is his biggest problem. I think if he can stay fit, Newcastle were absolutely fine striker-wise. It's just the question of can he stay fit. But he scored a goal every 114 minutes in the league this season, and I think everyone knows that Isak is a good striker. Everyone knows Isak's a good player, and everyone knows Isak can score. And I think Isak and Joe Willock, I think Eddie Howe's got his sub spot on. I think Isak and Joe Willock, despite having very good games, needed to come off, because I thought Joe Willock was brilliant. I thought Joe Willock brought the legs. I thought Isak was brilliant today, but they didn't look like 100% fit, 100% match sharp. And I think with Newcastle's injuries, if they can save Willock and they can save Isak, and now they're out of the cup, well, they're out of Europe, but still in the FA Cup, aren't they? And they've got one game a week. These guys would be really important if they want to push for Europe. I think top 5 is nailed on. But Manchester United are very hit and miss, inconsistent. West Ham hit and miss. Brighton hit and miss. I've seen Newcastle fans say that their season is over, but I'm thinking you can push for 6th. You can push for 6th, because even as a Manchester United fan, we've got more points than Newcastle, but Newcastle have had more good games than us. I know that sounds crazy, but there's more times I've watched Newcastle play where they've looked good and been convincing, and then I can just say they've had a lot of injuries. And while Man United have had a lot of injuries, there's not been many games where I've been convinced by United, but I think there's been many games that I've seen Newcastle and thought, yeah, this is what they can do. And today started iffy, but as they grew into the game, as they got key players back, and as it was a decent, strongish lineup, I was like, yeah, now they've got Willock back. If they, unfortunately they have Joe Linton for them. But their midfield looked a lot better. So I wanted to give credit to Isak. I wanted to also talk about Bruno Guimaraes. I think you could argue Bruno Guimaraes is up there for man of the match. I thought he was unplayable today, and I think him and Willock worked really well, and I thought his passing was really good. I think Bruno Guimaraes is one of the best passers in the league, and I still think Newcastle need to go for an out-and-out 6 to push Bruno Guimaraes further up, because I think his ability on the ball is so crucial. But I thought that Bruno Guimaraes controlled the tempo of the game. He won fouls. He was always playing the ball forward. Him and Willock always looking to get the attackers in behind. And I think that all in all, the Newcastle midfield was between this game and, you know, like a month ago, it was like night and day how they were moving the ball quicker, how the legs were there, how they could float through Wolves. And as I said, Wolves are a difficult team to beat. So watching Newcastle today, I was really, really impressed with what I saw. And they looked back to their best. And I think that the way I would describe it is they had their legs back. Now, I can't talk about everybody because I now need to film a reaction to the Liverpool game and a reaction to the Spurs game. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Bye.